All right, so now that we have your graffiti drawn out in pencil with your 3D, now we're going to talk about how to add color. Okay, so we're going to look at the inside of the letters first. So again, the respect and comes from your skill of using colors and how you're going to use them and the designs inside of your letters. So remember your color schemes that we looked at before. Okay, so we know the monochromatic color scheme, which is like one single color with different shades and tints of it. So for example, all different types of blues, light blues and dark blues. And of course, you can always add white and black in any color scheme because they're not colors, right? They're tints or they are shades, right? Or gray, right? So that's our first color scheme. Another color scheme is analogous, which are colors that are beside each other on the color wheel. So easier way to say it, it's either all warm colors or all cool colors. So I could create inside my letters all designs that are made up of oranges and reds and yellows, or blues and purples and greens. Okay. Now the third color scheme that we looked at is a complementary color scheme, which means colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So easy way to think about it, warm versus cool colors. Now, how that works is you're not going to be using a complementary color scheme inside of your letters. You would have inside your letters versus the background. So for example, the inside of your letters would be all warm colors, a warm color scheme, so oranges and yellows and reds, and the background would be cool colors, would be blues and greens and purples. So the complementary color scheme is important, but it's going to be warm versus cool, your letters versus the background. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, so let's look at some examples. So one thing that you can do inside your letters is you can do a solid fill. You can do one color on the bottom, for example, and another color on top. What you really don't want to do is you don't want to have your letter colored just red or just orange. Okay, so again, I'm going with a warm color scheme, and I picked two of them, two analogous colors, two colors beside each other on the color wheel, an orange and a red. Okay, and I've got them solidly shaded in. All right, now another way to do the fill inside your color is to do sort of a fade from one color to another. So this works great with pencil crayon or alcohol markers, which I wish we had an opportunity to use because I bought some nice ones for you. But you're going from something really deep and it's transitioning into another color. Okay, so that's called a fade. Now on top of all of these things, you want to put some sort of design element in them because it's not necessarily enough to have just like something filled in with either a fade going from a color to another or the sort of a solid fill. Okay, so this is sort of like you can do whatever you want, but traditionally some of the things that they add in are arrows, stars, stripes, waves, bubbles. You don't want to put all of them in. You sort of want to go with a theme. So you can do flames, you can do anything you want, right? Like whatever sort of suits the character of your letters. Like I'm thinking like bubble letters might be kind of fun to have bubbles in them, and kind of stars and kind of happier kind of shapes, right? More kind of angular letters. Stripes might work really well inside of them. So with all of these, I stayed with a warm color scheme. So whatever you sort of choose, if you're either going to be, if it's a monochromatic color scheme, all different kinds of blues, so whether you put stars inside of it, your stars would be a different shade of blue that stands out enough from your background. It can be really subtle if you want, but if you're doing all cool colors, right, you want to make sure that you're picking from your different types of blues or greens and purples. If you're doing your warm colors, you want to make sure that you're picking from your yellows and your oranges and your reds and all that different variations, right? And of course, pink works well because it's a warm color. It's just red tinted, red added with white. So again, don't go crazy adding all of these in. You can add a couple. You can have stripes and stars and waves and arrows or something like that, but definitely don't put all of these in. So these are just some suggestions. So stripes, waves, bubbles, arrows, stars, things like that. Okay? Something else that you can do is adding highlights. So just sort of imagine, like for this letter here, that the light's coming in, from one side, and it's just sort of, hitting it. So what would be really nice is if we had white paint markers like we do at school, and we can just over top of your pencil crayons add in those highlights, but it just gives it some depth. The example that I'm showing has it in white, but it doesn't always have to be white. I could stay with the color scheme, and I could do something like a bright pink, or a yellow would be really nice with it as well, but something that obviously is a lighter color than the colors that you're choosing, because it's a highlight. Okay. Of course, we need to color our 3D. So you can add designs and lines and things inside the 3D as well. The 3D can be solid. Your 3D is part of your letter. So the 3D, I want you to try to stay with the same color scheme that you've done with your letters. So because inside of my letters, everything that I have so far in the fill is a warm color scheme, I'm including that in my 3D. And because later on when I do my background, I can either stay with the warm colors, or I can go with a cool color scheme to sort of make my letters pop more. Okay, but your color scheme for your 3D should stay with the same theme as your letters. Okay, so here's just some examples of real graffiti, because I don't have my examples to show you at school, so I just found some online. But okay, so here's an example here. This one, they've got a fade. They're going from a bunch of colors. So they're going from a darker blue into sort of a greeny yellow. Okay, so they're going from a fade from a color to another, but they're not stopping there. They're using white for some highlights, and they've got some bubbles inside of them. Okay, so it could be that, simple. Right, here's an example of a 3-color fade where they're going yellow to a light green to sort of a limey green. But it's way better than just coloring in a single color, right? And they've actually added highlights in there as well. So you can get really complicated if you look here at just how they've used the color. I mean, at first glance, it sort of looks like inside they've just colored it blue, but they actually have a lot going on. So they're using so it's monochromatic inside of the blue, all different sort of variations of blue, and they've got like stripes, they've got these lightning kind of things, and these different shades, and they're spraying the spray can sort of on the side to get some mist sort of range of colors in there. But there's so many different types and variants of blues in there. They've really added a lot of designs, and then the 3D on it, they've just used sort of like a beige and with the yellow, and they've outlined some of it as well. Okay, so you don't always have to outline everything in black. Keep that in mind, right? You can, right? But you can see what a difference it makes when you're not necessarily doing everything in black. Right, so again, let's look back at Scam's work. So we look at his, you really look inside of the letters. There's a whole bunch of different design elements inside of the letters. So here we are, the letters inside themselves are just using sort of like different variations of blue. So they've got a fade going from a dark blue to a lighter blue. They've got really subtle stripes inside of the top of the letters with a very light blue, and they've got some of that, fade color coming over top of the bottom, the dark blue with some of the bubbles. Okay, so that's one way to use stripes and bubbles together, right? The stripes are at the top, the bubbles are on the bottom. Okay, so those are some examples of things that you can do. There's not one way. Just try and experiment, and the more that you do it, the more that you find your own way. Okay, but so think about your color scheme and think about some design inside the letter. So again, you are only doing the inside of the letters and your 3D. Okay, we'll see you in the next lesson. We're going to look at the glow line, and we're going to look at cool background.